Hey everybody, before we get into the podcast, I just want to let you know about our sponsor. It's a film called Sir John A. and the Curse of the Anti-Quenched. It's a fun film. You can get it on Vimeo on demand right now for only $2.99. Check out curseoftheantiquenched.com.
Are you telling me that you built a time machine? Out of a DeLorean?
Welcome to the Raiders of the Lost Commentary podcast.
Welcome to Jurassic Park.
The unofficial commentary for your favorite
Get to the chopper!
and not so favorite films.
The famous comedian Arnold Braunschweiger.
Starring your hosts Adam and Matt.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
Start your movie in 3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, this week on the podcast I have a special guest, Ross Boyask, and we're talking about his film I Am Vengeance, Retaliation. Ross, how are you, sir?
Hello, thanks so much for having me. I'm doing good. It's a very nice summer's day in London right now. How about you?
I'm well. You're actually our first guest from the UK on the podcast.
Oh, awesome.
So no pressure, but we're happy to have you on, and we're happy to talk to other filmmakers from throughout the world. So your film, I Am Vengeance, Retaliation, it's a sequel to I Am Vengeance. There's a lot of Batman fans on the podcast, so the I Am Vengeance thing is a good tie-in. So this is on iTunes, Amazon, so people, if they want to check that out right now, they're welcome to do that. Thought like right now, like Ross, maybe you can let us know a bit about yourself and how you got into the film business.
Okay, so I always try and keep this bit short, but it never works out.
It's a podcast. You can jabber for as long as you want, right?
Well, okay, cool. So when I was 2 years old, and I'm put it into perspective, I'm 45
This is going
now.
way back.
I'm 45. Yeah, no, actually I'm 7. Like I said, not that long ago. No, I'm 45 now. When I was 2 years old, all I cared about, and I'm not kidding, 2 to 3 years old, all I cared about was I wanted to draw comics or write comics, draw comics. And at the time, I didn't even know there were different companies, but I was a big Marvel and DC fan. I didn't even know there was a difference of that age, obviously. But I was always drawing Batman, Daredevil, Moon Knight, Thor, everyone you can imagine in my school exercise books. I didn't care about schoolwork. I was just obsessed with comics. And that carried on for quite a while until one day when I was I was 11 years old. Myself and a few school friends watched 3 movies in one day that changed my life forever. And when you speak to filmmakers, I'll ask you, what was the film that made you want to make movies?
I think it was a handful of things, a lot of Kevin Smith stuff, but it was in particular, it was watching the behind the scenes of Clerks that I was like, whoa, he made this for like no money. And then I was like, I can make something for no money. That was sort of like the light bulb that connected some things.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. When you ask people kind of my generation, I don't think I've ever said that before, but roughly my age group, what movies made you want to make movies? They'll invariably say things like, I don't know, The Godfather or Jaws or Star Wars, or, the liars will say Citizen Kane and things like that. No, Citizen Kane didn't make anyone want to make a movie. I love that movie, but no one saw Citizen Kane.
Not a lot of young kids sitting down to watch Citizen Kane, I don't think.
No, exactly. It's amazing, but anyway. So, but people will say things like that, right? Of a certain genre, prestige, Indiana Jones, even whatever, right?
Right.
So for me, I saw 3 movies in one day that totally changed my life, and they were in order: Revenge of the Ninja, Commando, and American Ninja.
Right.
So
Commando, the Schwarzenegger.
The Schwarzenegger Commando,
the
great big cartoon. It's just amazing. I've seen it over 150 times, and I'm pretty much just watching it in my head as we're speaking right now.
We covered that on the podcast before. It is Schwarzenegger films are just one of those things that they're so much fun. I don't know what it is. They're just fun.
Yeah, it's unapologetically entertaining. I know a whole bunch of people that worked on that movie now as well, which is fantastic.
Oh, that's great.
Oh yeah, no, crazy. And so essentially I watched those 3 movies in that one afternoon, and my 11-year-old brain went, how do I do that?
Yeah.
How does that, how do I make that? Because, and let's be clear then, I'm a big comic book fan, and ninjas look kind of like superheroes, and Schwarzenegger in Commando was certainly a cartoon, as were all of the villains, who were all amazing. And simple stories of good versus evil, ninjas can kind of, fight scenes and gadgets and sort of seemingly magical abilities and all of that stuff, right? It all kind of translates into comic books. And so from then on, that's kind of all I really wanted to do. As well, I still wanted to do comics because I love comics to this day, but it was all about how do we do that then? And then we found one of our friends again had his dad had a video camera. My friends and I, we all started doing martial arts, Wadaru karate to start off with, and we would do things like go into my back garden, my parents' back garden, and we would like choreograph fight scenes and try and film them. We would watch movies or fight scenes, action scenes, frame by frame. And this is back in the day of VHS where you had to, frame jump, frame jump, frame jump, frame jump.
Ruins your VHS.
Oh, we destroyed. Oh my God, the number of my VHSs before I've still got a few, where the beginning of a fight scene would just be creased. Like you can just see there's a crease from where we paused it, and so it would be like we didn't even know that there was a different names for shots or we didn't know what editing was. We didn't know anything, but we went, okay, so this is like we didn't know the closer. It's just his face, and he throws a punch, and then we go to this bigger shot where there's like everyone's in it, and you see the punch. Yeah, it's that kind of thing, and we would basically copy that. That's
so you were
what we
learning.
would do.
You were
and we
learning
used to crash.
shot listing at a young age, almost.
Yeah, and again, we didn't even know the terminology by any means. In the UK, we didn't. I mean, at least certainly not at that age for myself. Like in my, from the age of 11, let's say to 13, 14 or whatever. Like we didn't really have movie books. I mean, you'd have the occasional making of, I think, occasionally, but certainly nothing like the DVD extras we get today. Rebel Without a Crew was years away. All of those great books, which of course I've read. I only really got into movie making, book reading much later. William Goldman, all essential stuff. All of that stuff much later. Well, when I was a university student, college student. So which I devoured all those books, of course. So it was all about learning by doing, and I believe that to this day. You learn by doing. You can be taught anything you want. You can watch any documentary or read any book, but until you're doing something, you're not really learning anything.
Yeah, you got to jump in the pool at one point, right?
You absolutely do, and you should try everything. Yeah, all about anything you're scared of doing in terms of the production process. You should try to do. I think.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So that kind of progressed from us sort of making sort of bumbling short films, etc., until I got to college in the UK. It's called Sixth Form College, where I met who would become my first producer, Phil Hobden, who I do a podcast with right now, and he produced my first 2 features in the end. But before that, we did lots and lots of shorts and music videos and corporates, and we just sort of learned together. He was a massive horror nut. I was a massive action martial arts nut. He introduced me to horror. I'd seen a couple, but I was never really into it. But he introduced me very properly to horror. And in some ways, I introduced him to things like No Retreat, No Surrender and King of the Kickboxers and China O'Brien and whatever, all of those movies and variously other things. So that's kind of, I was going to say that's the short version. Roughly. But from there, it progressed to university, doing a media production course. And after that, it was just doing any job we could, any corporates or short films, any music videos, anything.
So you were able to start like a production company kind of right out of film school, essentially, or?
Yeah, I mean, I would never call it anything as formal as a company at the time.
Right.
Because the first feature that we did, which was called Left 4 Dead over here, which did very well. We took it to Cannes and we sold it and stuff. That's kind of jumping the gun a bit, but we did do that. It was essentially a short film that we just didn't stop making. We worked with our longtime compatriot Glenn Salvage, who's been in a bunch of movies. Really lovely guy, Brighton-based, great actor, been in tons of movies. Anyway, but at the time we were all like a fledgling group of friends, really, making movies. We just happened to have that stuff in common, liking action and martial arts and so forth. And we were kind of making this short, and we just kept shooting this short. And we were kind of going, what are we doing? And Phil very wisely said, let's just stop for a bit and figure out what we're doing. Because we were using the Canon XL1S, which was the cameras that they made 28 Days Later on.
Yeah, I'm familiar with those.
So I mean, it was arguably still my favorite camera to this day. If I could get a disc, like a chip, a card camera that was the model of the XL1S, I'd be happy as anything. It was
Yeah,
just
eh?
wonderful to operate. So we kind of realized that we had the capability of doing something, very genre. And at the time, we didn't necessarily know how important genre is to the market. And we just sort of like, what are we going to do? We did this feature. We ended up doing the feature weekends and evenings with friends and some more professional people whenever we could find them and bring them on board. And then, and we took it to Cannes. This is a very short version of this. It took about 2 years. Took it to Cannes. And very, very luckily, we spoke to a bunch of sales agents. One of them we went with, and it sold a bunch of territories, and then we did our second film, and there's another story for you.
Yeah, but so when you did that first one, the short that turned into the feature, like, did you have any idea of how distribution worked, or any idea of the inner workings of all that, or did you just like fumble your way through it? Like, take us through a bit of that, because that's a big thing to go from nothing of a short to turn it into a feature and then to get it sold. I'm assuming you sold it at Cannes, like when you go into like the hotels and you like kind of rent out
Correct.
a room. And okay.
Well, we didn't do that. We kind of wandered the halls. So
for those that don't know, do you want to explain what happens at Cannes? Because there is the Cannes Film Festival, like the prestigious one, but then Cannes is also a place where films get sold.
So anything that you would have seen on television about the Cannes Film Festival is not even 2% of the actual market and festival that's there. If you've basically seen the red carpet, you don't really know anything about Cannes. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of people they understand what goes on. They don't know, and that's not meant to be disrespectful. They don't know, because if you haven't been, you don't know. And so essentially, what it is, the Marché du Film is essentially a market. It's like a trade market where people essentially buy and sell, acquire and sell films. Primarily, sales agents are there to sell to distributors. Occasionally, they might acquire a title. We're quite strict because, for those who don't know, I'm a partner in Evolutionary Films. We're a production company, sales agent, and UK distributor. That probably might have been a good thing for me to say at the start. So we do film sales and distribution as well. But at that point, when I made my first feature, I had been to Cannes several years in a row. I'd been since 1999 because a friend of mine was having a film show there, and I just thought, what better time than to actually go, because I'll have a reason to go. I'll have an actual reason to attend, So I had gathered a certain amount of information on sales and distribution, but tangentially, like I said, we'd meet people, talk to people, and so forth. In fact, there were a couple of sales agents there that were very nice to us as fledgling filmmakers. One company was, I think, Canadian, in fact, called H3O back in the day, run by John Curtis.
Not familiar with them. But...
Yeah, I think they might be called something else now. Before that, they were called Prophecy.
Okay.
Really nice people. They made some great genre movies with people like Michael Dudikoff, Brian Bosworth, like people like that. Like, it was, they were a lot of fun. And they did sort of give us the ins and outs. When they found out I was a massive fan of Canon Films, Golan Globus, who really did do a lot of things for the Cannes film market back in the day. Like, they started things like pre-sales, all sorts of things. It was amazing when you think about it, if you go back and look at how the company operated. And so he kind of like told me a bit more about the business, and that was really helpful. So when we went with the feature, I didn't have the biggest, like the most detailed information of sales and distribution, but I had an idea.
Okay.
Like I understood that action works. That was probably it. Really. Because we were much more focused on wanting to make films as opposed to the market end. It was fortunate that we made a film that was commercial. And this is a piece of advice we give to everybody all the time when people contact us, is think about who your film is for. Right.
That's a good point. Yeah.
We were kind of lucky in that, like, the films we love are the films we like to make. So it's almost, again, tangential that happens to be what the market likes. Over action tends to be fairly evergreen.
Right.
Evergreen. So, and it was lucky, but what we did was this crazy set of fights. It's a bananas amount of action in Left 4 Dead, with some very talented martial artists and a lot of guys who genuinely went on to be very successful, like screen fighters and stuntmen and stuff in the industry today, which is really exciting. Really, when I look back, so it's kind of fun. So at that time, I had a little bit of information, but really, we learned much more when we had a product we could show them, when we could actually show essentially sales agents who would, in theory, make money off your film.
So
it's a commercial product.
in those days, did you have a tape, like a beta, or or a DVD, or what did you have?
We were just at the dawn of DVD screeners.
Oh, okay. So you're able to. Did you have a room, or did you just bring around a disc or like a portable?
Well, we basically brought around like watermarked screeners, essentially.
Okay, and did you cut it into like a trailer or sizzle? Like
we had a trailer. Yeah, we had. I'm trying to remember back in the day now. I think we had more like I think it was more like a sizzle back in the day. Thinking about it, it's a long time ago. So we had like a poster. Yeah, we had some marketing material. Yeah, very basic marketing materials, and that just helped. And we gave it to a number of sales agents. To look at, all of whom were fairly fine, and most of them are still around today, which is, I guess, a good sign, give or take. And funnily enough, when we were sort of towards the end of our time there, we were kind of thinking, who are we gonna, because we had a few agents say they were interested, and then we went back to the one who we ended up going with, which was Worldwide, run by Barbara Mudge, who was lovely. We sort of said. They said they really wanted the movie, and that was really great. But they ended up actually doing a genre division. They used to do things like kind of like faith-based movies, that kind of stuff. They did other things, but they did a lot of that.
It's a big jump to go to action then after doing faith-based.
Well, I mean, they did some other stuff too, but they did have that kind of area. But then they actually ended up doing a genre sort of wing because of it. They took on several more movies, and like it was kind of cool. It was kind of a cool experience. And we sat down with them and we said, well, okay, what we want to do is we want to take the movie home and kind of like it was way too long. It was an hour and 50 minutes. And we were like, we know that's too long. We want to get it down to, like 90, whatever. Just we want to cut a load out because we know it's too big. And she said to us, well, actually, we've already shown it to buyers and we've got several deals we could do.
Oh, wow.
And we were like, where do we sign?
Yeah.
Kind of like for first time feature makers, to go over there and have that happen was, and look, I'm not going to pretend it was a fortune by any means, but it was extraordinary. It was an extraordinary validation of the work that I guess we put in.
Yeah, look, like I know a lot of times, like we like to attribute success and like financial success of a film as the same, but like if you make an independent film, you set out to make something and just get it released somewhere. That's its own success in and of itself, especially when you're, running against like budget constraints or time constraints or what have you, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's cool, man. Like, so the first thing you did, you were able to bring it to Cannes, and so you get like did you sell just like a worldwide, like exclusive rights deal, or like, how did deals break out back in the day?
It was done. It's not too far away from like it was say. We didn't like get an MG from Worldwide. They did each deal, and we got they got their cut, we got our cut essentially.
Right.
So it was a fairly straightfortright model. It wasn't
an MG is a minimum guarantee, by the way. So it's
correct. Correct.
An amount of money up front that a company would give to a film to buy a film, and then those numbers can vary from time to time, but. Sometimes you get an MG and a split, or just a split, or they just give you money and then they say like, this is ours now forever. But
yeah, exactly. That does happen.
That's interesting. So that's your jumping off point. So from there, like, did this company contact you again and say like, hey, do you have more ideas in the thing, or are you guys shooting another film? Or
it didn't really work that way, and not for any reason that I can remember. Like there was never any or anything, but we ended up, because we even got taken under the wing of a very prolific Australian producer called David Hannay, who made so many movies, and in fact, he made a movie called The Man from Hong Kong, which I was always a very big fan of, and a classic biker movie called Stone, amongst many others. And we kind of got taken under his wing. Phil contacted him first, in fact, and he introduced us to our next sales agent, which was IFM Sales, and essentially an Australian outfit, but based in LA. And we were just talking about what we were going to do next, which resulted in being the movie 10 Dead Men, which did, for a very like a nearly no money movie, we sold a bunch of territories. It did really well, and got a fair bit of profile, which was nice. And it was a much slicker, more stripped down movie this time. We obviously were like, we're going to make sure this is a tight, lean movie. We had sort of our own aims behind doing it, kind of thing. The only difficulty that it presented us with in the end was that they were really on us to deliver the movie before like whichever market. I can't remember if it was AFM or Cannes or one of the markets, and we had to really push in the post to kind of. I think in the end the movie's fine, although I see all the things that I'm not happy with still.
You
obviously.
always do, eh?
Yeah, I can't help it. But in the end we delivered it. It sold a bunch of places. That's great. So it's hard to complain.
So did they give you budget for that, or did they say like
no?
Did they say like you find your
no.
own sort of budget for this and then we'll distribute it, or?
It was. I mean, in the end, initially it was sort of you deliver this movie, we will sell it for you, which was fine. And again, that did end up working out well. I think in many ways I wish it's all 20/20 hindsight. I think I wish that towards the end of the post process we should have just said, you know what, it's not going to work for this market, guys. You're going to have to wait.
Right.
And look, the film would have only have been, I don't know, 10% better objectively. In terms of like just really finishing it properly. I feel like that was slightly wasted. But in the end, that was 12 years ago. So
right.
like get on with it. Get on with the next thing. But yeah, that was an ever so slight. I don't want to say I regret exactly, but I feel like maybe we should have just pushed and said, "Listen, we really want to finish the post on this properly."
Yeah, the woulda, couldas, and all that. So with that, like, do they have much say over? Like, are they like checking over your script before you shoot? Are they like, you guys got to have X amount of this and that, or are they like whatever you make, or we trust you kind of thing? Or
I will say I don't remember them putting in any particular demands per se. We were fairly specific about what we were going to do already, and I think we could be, again, maybe we'd have to ask Phil or even the sales guys. I think we were fairly specific about what we were doing. We kept them apprised. Yeah, it was never a distant thing. We were always fairly up to date with what we were doing.
Yeah.
So and again, I think if they had, we would have said, well, give us some money then, because if you're deciding things, I think we would have probably what's the word? Sort of recoiled a touch if that had been a situation.
Yeah, no doubt. And as a filmmaker, I'm sure you feel this way too. Just having like creative autonomy over the project is paramount. I also noticed you edit a lot of your stuff too. So
yeah.
So you have a lot of, like me, control issues where you want to control everything, I'm assuming.
I mean, only to a degree, and 50-50.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is, first of all, I work with my business partners and producers, John Adams and Diane Shorthouse. John's the CEO. Diane is the MD of Evolutionary Films, and they are the producers, certainly of the Vengeance franchise. And so I always get good notes from them, whether it's script, post, etc. And they're on the set, obviously. So it's a good collaboration with them. We don't always agree on everything, but why would we? That's natural.
That's good though.
Yeah, I don't think you should. Exactly. I think that there's sometimes when things are too harmonious, I feel like there's complacency. So it's okay to rub up against people, like not literally, of course. We don't need any of those stories getting out.
Well, especially with COVID now too, you got to keep your 6 feet.
Keep your 6 feet and your gloves and your mask.
Yeah.
But no, it's a strong relationship in that and again, John and Diane are constantly talking to our buyers in terms of distributors internationally. So that's a good relationship. You want to maintain like continuity between what your buyers are expecting and what you're delivering. Right. It's really important. Again, for anyone listening who's making films or planning to make a movie or whatever, do your market research. People will talk to you, but distributors and sales agents will speak to you. If you need to be really clear about what you're doing, and look, you might need to nudge them. They're not all going to reply immediately, but people will talk to you. We want, as a sales agent and a distributor, we want product. We want product we know that we can sell. You know, so we're very, and you don't have to agree with everything that people are telling you, of course. But if you're genuinely making a movie and you've invested, whether it's money, your money, investors' money, even sweat equity, just for time and effort that you're putting into it, or that your colleagues or friends or whatever are putting into it. If you really want it to have some kind of release or profile or whatever you want to call it, speak to the people who make that happen. It's just common sense. We have phones and emails and things. We're very open overall. Again, might take a while sometimes to come back because, we're doing stuff, but we're always interested in what is coming through. We're always looking for films in post or films that are about to shoot. You know, what are you actually doing? Who are you casting? You know, how can we make this, you know, more applicable to the things that we know our buyers are looking for?
That's really great sound advice. So to segue that a bit, so you're releasing I Am Vengeance Retaliation now. Walk me through a bit of like your thought process of releasing a film during like a global pandemic, and like did you
Yeah.
was this something that was obviously probably in the release schedule or to begin with, and then are you just releasing as planned, or did your marketing strategy have to completely change because of, you know, the pandemic?
So we've actually released a few titles during the pandemic for very and fairly different movies and stuff. We've got some more coming out fairly soon. We've got a new movie called Tribal coming out, which has just been released in the States through SP Releasing. Really good fun sort of survival horror martial arts action movie. When it comes to I Am Vengeance Retaliation, it all kind of stood on our North American distributors, who were Saban and Lionsgate, and they're amazing, obviously. With the first film, with I Am Vengeance, or as it's known, Vengeance in some territories, with the first movie, it was my first film as a director that was released theatrically in the States.
Wow.
Across 10
Congratulations.
states. Yeah, it wasn't. Thank you. It wasn't very long, but it was amazing. It was in 10 states. My sister, who lives in South Beach, you know, sent me a photo of the title on the billboard. So I was like, wow, that's crazy.
Exciting.
Yeah, it was amazing for me. So, yeah, so very great. I believe, you know, I say this with some education, I believe that the plan was originally going to be to try and do some kind of theatrical release with the sequel, but I think also they obviously have their own slots that they have to release. You know, they're a very big company. They obviously have to fill whatever their quotas or schedules are. And at some point they probably had to think, well, we've just got to release this movie. You can't just wait indefinitely. So, you know, and it's possible, again, you'd have to speak to them, it's possible that the pandemic or the quarantine aspect may have influenced them, say, look, we have a trapped home audience, so let's just go for it, you know. And as part of the deal, because they have EP credits on the movie, no other territory could release before them.
Okay.
So they could release the same day, but we can't release before them. And in fact, we've just released in the UK last week, which has gone really well. And there are many other territories that I believe are releasing in the coming months. So, I mean, they obviously all have their own strategies, right? Again, with us, we would have loved to have done, you know, at least a premiere event screening. We were talking theatrically. But again, at some point, you have to release the movie.
Yeah.
You just we can't sit on it indefinitely.
Was drive-ins ever on the table?
It's funny.
Do they do drive-ins in the UK as well?
Well, that's a really good question. Funnily enough, I'm attending my first drive-in premiere this Wednesday of a movie, a drama that a friend of mine produced, which I'm very excited about. It's in Brent Cross in London, where there is actually a drive-in venue. And they're doing things like movies. They're also doing like stand-up comedy. They're doing all kinds of things in this venue, which is a great idea. Drive-ins were never really a thing as opposed to the States, just in terms of, you know, you need a lot that's big enough, you know, and all the technology that goes with it.
Yeah,
so
we have space here for it.
Right, and there are. I mean, look, and your driving culture goes back to what, the 50s, I think.
Yeah,
am I
something
right?
like that.
Maybe
it was a lot more popular,
So,
I remember, in the 90s when I was a kid, and now it's
Oh, right.
got its own like resurgence. Like here in Ottawa, there's like a company that just popped up overnight, and they got a field, they got a screen, and like they're
Wow.
packing cars in. Like right now, they have shows planned,
Amazing.
they have films planned. We're in
That's great.
our quote unquote stage 3 here too, so movie theaters are allowed to have people in it with limited capacity, and you got to wear a mask the whole time. But so
Right.
yeah, it's changed the game for sure. But that is exciting. Like, I mean, drive-ins are always fun, and it is like I do see genre pictures being popular in a drive-in to begin with. So
Right. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that makes sense. So we don't have what you would call necessarily the culture of it, but there are certainly venues popping up, and people are starved of things to do, right? So that if they see something happening, they'll probably go. You know, you probably will book people in, depending on how that balances against their fear of other things, right?
yeah,
So it's
I'm still
been a bit of
like curious because like at least in the 90s, a car you can turn off the lights, but now all the cars are automatically the lights are on, and
yeah, that's a really good point.
so it's either you're gonna get eaten by like flies or mosquitoes because your windows are down, or you're gonna have your car on with the AC, and your lights are gonna be on. So I'm still curious about
Unless
how that
you
works, but I don't know.
Well, do they? This is purely a question. Do they have the screen elevated so that it would be above the range of the light, if you see what I'm
You'd
saying.
still
Like,
be
does that work?
blinding the guy behind you or in front of you, though, right? So.
Oh, I suppose so. Yeah, you're right. I have no idea how that works.
Yeah. So.
How weird.
Yeah. Anyways, so walk me through. So walk me through like at least the first I Am Vengeance film. Was this the first time you attached like sort of a quote unquote like a star or a name to something with Stu Bennett? Or
Yes. Yeah, and Gary Daniels, certainly martial arts action legend, really, as well as a few other people. There's also Keith Allen, who in the UK is a very well-known character actor.
Okay.
And he's done a bunch of movies and TV as well. But so yeah, in many ways that really was my first. Although I had worked with like, if you like, name actors in various other capacities. Like I've done fight coordination and worked with certain people, and and I've worked with some people that you would call names, I guess, previously. And I've certainly met a number in, at screenings and things. So I didn't feel totally out of my depth.
Right.
And in the end, when you're making a movie, regardless of your role, and I mean this in the best way, you're there to do the job.
Yeah.
So get the job done. you know. And of course, we had Anna Schaffer, who was fantastic from Harry Potter and now The Witcher. So, it was great. No, it was a very great experience. And the cast and crew all the way around did a great job. Actually, it was remarkable. It was certainly my first production as a director where I sort of on day 2 I had this strange experience where I was like watching people. We were setting up the next scene or whatever, and everyone was like scurrying around getting everything done, and I was like, there are so many people working on this movie, like. What and I don't have to put anyone's coats away. Like, what's happening? Like, it's so strange. And I don't mean that even negatively. I'll do whatever on a film. So I just love being on a set and working. So it was kind of a strange thing. And then, but that moment passed. It was like, well, get on with it now. Come on, that's really cool, but get on with it.
Yeah, you just focus on your job and
deliver your day.
Do you write the script and then do you talk to your producers like who could we offer this role to, or do you talk to them before you write the script and like, hey, we have this idea, would this be something you're into? Or
so on the first one it was a quite specific thing where I wrote the script and we were kind of like mulling it over and developing it and so forth, and then a friend of mine, Scott Adkins, was shooting a film for the WWE called Eliminators at 3 Mills Studios, which is where Evolutionary Films is based. We have an office there.
Okay.
Our production office, if you like. And I knew he was going to be there. And I knew a bunch of people on the production because, again, local genre movie people. There's a pool of us, if you like.
Right.
So that was fun. And Stu was going to be, he was the lead villain. And I went down to the set. You don't try to interrupt people, but it's nice to see everybody there. So I had a couple of chats with people. Saw Scott, spoke to some people here and there. Didn't really get a chance to speak to Stu very much. We sort of said hello, briefly, but that was kind of it. And then, so this is a slightly strange. This is I don't know. This is sort of a case of making your own luck, I think.
Right.
I'm sitting. It's about, I don't know. They've been there for a couple of weeks or 2 or 3 weeks at the studio. And I get a phone call from a friend who's a stunt guy. Nothing to do with Eliminators, but he's a nice guy. And he said, I'm bringing my cousin. My cousin's come to London. He'd like to look around a film studio. Would you mind if we popped to 3 Mills? And this is in East London, so people know. And I was like, sure. I mean, it's a bunch of buildings. Like he wanted to come in the evening. A studio is just like a set of warehouses in an evening.
Yeah.
But I was like, sure, I'm here. It'd be lovely to see you. Haven't seen him for a while. Yeah, all of that stuff. And he shows up, and his cousin is very nice. And then someone else jumps out of a car who is a long-term friend of mine, a stunt guy and actor called Jason Beeston, who was actually in Left 4 Dead and a bunch of my other stuff. It was a real surprise to see him. He was like, lovely to see him, blah, 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 chit-chat. We're just about to start showing the friend around the studio when Stu Bennett literally sort of walks around from around the corner with a PA who I'd met a couple of times on the shoot from Eliminators. And the first thing that happens is my friend Jason leaps on top of Stu. Now, anyone who's seen Stu, he's 6'5" or something, 6'6" or something. Anyway, and I'm like, what's he doing?
You're embarrassing me.
But I don't even really know him at this point, right? He just leaps on him. And it turns out that my friend Jason has actually very briefly doubled Stu in a couple of moments for Eliminators. I have no idea. So it was all very random. I didn't know he was going to be there. I certainly didn't know that you knew Stu. And he went, "Oh, have you met my friend Ross? He's this really great director." I was like, "Oh my god!" Like, hi,
Right.
Like, hi. And he kind of goes, "Hey, blah blah blah, chit chat, chit chat." He said, "Yeah, are you working on anything?" I said, "Well, funnily enough, I'm camping an action, and she would really like you to read the script." And he was like, "Oh, okay." And I said, "Is it all right if I can literally go and get it from the office?" Just over there. And he went, "Sure." Yeah. So the friends kind of kept him talking, and I turned the corner, and then I ran like I was so out of breath. I had to do 3 flights of stairs. It's not even kidding. And I was in much worse shape than I am now. It's embarrassing. I literally ran up to the office where Diane was actually printing out a batch of scripts, like, because we were going to start.
They're still hot.
And not even joking. I was like, "It's Stu's downstairs. Can you just?" And she threw me a script, which was amazing. And I just pelted back out of there. And I got to that corner, slowed myself down, tried to get my breathing under control, and then kind of strolled back around the corner and gave
Make it seem like not too obvious.
Well, it reminded me of, if you've seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the bit where the principal is like dashing between the classes and then walking in front of the doors with. It's kind of that.
Yeah.
And my eyebrows were sweating. Like, everything was sweating. It's disgusting. Anyway, he took the script, chit chat. And then, he read it. We had a chat. John and Diane, obviously, as a producer, spoke to him and his agents and everything. And that's kind of where it went from. But it just goes to show you, I found out not long after that was his last day in the studio.
Oh.
If we hadn't seen him at that moment, I would. Now, we could have sent the script to his agent, of course. That's fine, and who knows? Maybe that would have all been good. But meeting him personally at that point, and the fact that Jason knew him and they'd gotten well, all of this stuff.
It's very serendipitous, eh?
Very much.
That's great.
Very much.
So in the UK, do you guys have similar like acting unions like SAG or like we have here ACTRA, and like do you have to make films under those regulations with actors? So like when you approach somebody like Stu, is he like a union actor or?
So we have equity. And we have the stunt. We have the stunt register. We do a lot of movies that you would just basically call non-union, for want of a better way of saying it. I know that I'm not sure where Stu fell. This is slightly more of a producer question, so I'm not sure if Stu just fell under like SAG because he's based in America.
Right.
He was based in Florida. He briefly went to New York, and then I believe he's in LA now. So I'm not sure of all of those concerns for him. I don't actually know that. A bit more of a producer question. In the UK, you can sort of choose. I mean, I don't want to speak too out of school. You can sort of choose to do things non-union, but then of course it does. You don't want to step on anyone's toes. We wouldn't be non-union to stick a thumb up at anyone. That's not the point. It's more about what can you actually afford from your budget, etc.
Totally, yeah.
So but all of our I don't know why I suddenly feel the need to say everything we do is legal. We're all good. We are.
No. Like here in Canada, the union laws are really strict. Where like if you're running a union production, you can only have union members on it. So like if you have one actor member. Probably true. Or if you have one non-actor member or a SAG member or whatever, you have to pay penalties for that person every day. So it really makes it like budget prohibitive, like for any type of independent film. Like your minimum budget's $1 million to make like a single location union flick. So but I'm assuming the laws are a little looser there, or like they're just a little less.
I mean, from what I'm not the best person to ask about it, but I feel like we've never had any particular issues with anything as such. Like I don't think we've ever had any actual like, oh my god, we have to do this, and this now. It's nothing like that.
Right. Well, that's good because it can be like a real stick in our spokes here in Canada. Like we've written something recently and approached a few people about it, and then we find out they're actors. Like it sinks the whole. We can't cast them at all, because like we're never gonna raise a couple $1 million for something like this. So it's like a small indie.
And also, dare I say, on the other side, is it worth raising the money? Like in terms of if it's a commercial venture, is it actually worth raising that much? Like, can you make that money back on the people?
Exactly.
Which is it's a terrible thing to say, but it's super relevant.
Yeah, the bite's not worth the chew. Like. But
That's a good phrase. I didn't know that. That's a great phrase.
yeah, I just made it up. I don't know if it's a real thing or not. I think I'm just hungry. So you get to work with Stu on the first one. Obviously, he had a good enough time, and it was successful enough that you wanted to come back for the sequel. Like, run us through what that was like, just having a success with the first one enough that was it like a discussion that there was going to be a sequel, or was it like, run us through a bit of that.
Well, funnily enough, when we delivered the first movie to I was going to say a bunch of buyers, but yeah, a bunch of our buyers, pardon me, a number of them came back pretty swiftly and just said, "What are you doing for a sequel then?" And we were like, "Okay."
We're writing it.
Yeah, like they were like on the phone to me going, "Get writing the sequel." So it kind of was like that, like in terms of how the first film was received. Look, I'm a realist. I know what the flaws are of everything I do all too well, and I don't mean that from a negative position. I just mean I'm not delusional about what we make and how we sell it and everything. Like it's a very commercial venture. We're as creative as is humanly possible, and you want to push the bar and everything. But I'm not someone who sits there going, "Isn't that a work of art?"
Right.
I'm very happy for any success that we have, and I'm usually super proud, of course, of the people involved. Like if for reviews for Retaliation, certain cast members have been like praised, pretty much universally reviews, and I'm so happy for them.
That's great.
And dare I say, in a slightly mercenary way, hopefully it means I did my job right too. Like in fact, hopefully we all did. Even when an individual is picked out, that's amazing. But hopefully it's all the work that went into it with them. If you see what I'm saying, kind of hopefully brings it all out.
Yeah,
right?
if you did your job right, you almost become invisible.
Yeah, like the editing for a start. You shouldn't notice editing, should you?
No, unless it's like something really, really obvious. But yeah,
of course, yeah. If it's an act, if you're doing, if you are going, look at me, kind of thing. Sure.
Yeah.
I try not to, but anyway. But no, so there was that, and then there was the development of the script and like what were our aims going to be with the sequel, the second movie. So just for people who don't know, Retaliation, you do not have to have seen the first movie. You don't have to have watched it to watch the second movie. I mean, it helps. There are only 2 returning characters from the first movie. You don't really need to know what happened. Like, the events of the first movie don't particularly have any bearing on the second. That was very intentional. So, I mean, I think it fills you in a bit on who Stu's character is, but I think that also comes across if you just watch the second movie on its own merits.
I think if you watch the trailer, you get a sense too of what's going to happen. In writing the sequel, you talk a lot about, the market and knowing your audience. Is a decision to get somebody like Vinnie Jones in the film, is that like, look, do we want to go after kind of like, we need a heavy for the movie. Here's our top 5 list. Do we send them a script and an offer, or is it another thing where you accidentally ran into Vinnie Jones somewhere at the supermarket? Or
pretty hard to accidentally run into. So there's a few things that happened. Again, John and Diane were instrumental, of course, in putting this together. Our aims for the second movie were, there was a few aims. First of all, if we're doing a genre movie, so the aim is to go, and I use this phrase in inverted commas, bigger and better. So that would infer more of what you would call an action movie. The first movie is more like a revenge thriller with action sequences in it. The pitch for the first movie was essentially Get Carter meets Commando, for want of a better way of saying it.
Right.
And then the second movie was much more along the lines of, it's going to be less retro, even though it's an absolute nod to films of the 80s and 90s. But the styling of it is going to be more contemporary, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I got a bit of Assault on Precinct 13 vibes, at least at the start, The original, like the John Carpenter one.
I'm a massive fan of that movie.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, I love that movie. At some point, I'm going to end up doing something. Like, it's going to be a one-location...
action movie.
Siege movie. It's bound to happen at some point.
That's great.
My friend, one of my friends who's based in LA now, does a lot of writing and directing. We used to have this idea. We wanted to pitch a movie, but it was Die Hard on a chair. It wasn't because it wasn't Die. It had Die Hard on a train, Die Hard on a plane,
Die Hard on a bus, Die Hard on a boat.
Just a chair, just a single chair. and see how we could make that work. Like, we didn't expect it to go anywhere, but we liked the pitch.
That's a challenge. That's a writing challenge right there.
Precisely. There's 2 hours on a chair shooting people. Like, this will work. We can make this work. Well, Willis is $1 million a day, so we can probably do that. Anyway,
one day, one chair, one man. That's all you need.
There you go. Perfect pitch. No, it'd be 1 man, 1 gun, 1 chair.
Yeah.
Like, the end. And no man in the poster, just the chair. So I don't know what we're talking
there we go.
about.
We're making a new movie. We're going to get off the podcast right now. And
it's on. But the point is, Bigger and Better as a sequel, as a genre movie. So that meant more action, and it meant making the movie more action based as opposed to a thriller, like as opposed to a revenge. Even we wanted to keep the theme of revenge, but we translated the theme of revenge sort of to another character. We wanted to open up Gold's character more, and the way to do that was to kind of bounce him off more characters. So the idea of a team movie, like more of a team movie, with Gold still as the lead character, but more of a team movie. And then the idea of a nemesis from his past. So the idea was to open up his character in those various ways. He kind of becomes a bit lighter through the movie because he interacts with Shapiro and Lynch, who are 2 of the soldiers that he works with, who are much more, kind of a bit more upbeat. And then, of course, his scenes with the character Sean Teague, who was played by Vinnie Jones. Again, the idea was to open up about his past without being too detailed. So they have conversations. There's a fight in the middle of the Retaliation, which is this fight in an alleyway where you kind of get some of their acrimonious relationship coming out. But I didn't want it to be like, I remember that time in Bulgaria where you fucked me over.
Right.
I hate all that stuff. But it's sort of insinuated.
Right. So you have him on set for do you plan out his days? Like, hey, is that like part of the offer? You're like, look, we only need you for 3 days or a day.
It's funny because I think that the perception would be that with a modestly budgeted UK movie, action movie, genre movie, but you'd get he's a very well-known household name. I think that there's probably a perception out there, but yes, you got Vinny in for 2 days or something. Vinny was with us for 3 weeks nearly, pretty much 3 weeks. It was a 4-week shoot. He was with us for I think basically 3 weeks. Yeah, the vast majority of the shoot, which was really what's the word? It was very helpful because first of all, you're not rushing it's always every day is a rush. Obviously, you're chasing daylight, but it meant that we really had him to work with him properly. We had a very long chat before he came on board, before we were shooting, I should say rather, which was really beneficial about his ideas on the character and what he wanted to bring to it. And then it was a proper process working with him.
That's great.
So it wasn't a thing. It wasn't. Don't get me wrong. We had to schedule it like anything else. Like our first AD, Marius Hambalides, was incredible. But we scheduled him like we would schedule anyone else, except for, of course, we only had him for these 3 weeks. So there was that. Same with Stu, really. But it wasn't a thing where it was like, right, we've got him for 3 days, we just need to shoot him out. It wasn't really like
shoot close-ups. We have a double for the walking away scenes. Or
that really didn't happen at all. And I think hopefully I hope that shows. I hope people don't sit there thinking, they only had him for a day. I don't know. Obviously, he's doubled in the action scenes by a terrific stunt guy called Aaron DeStreet from Brighton, which is my hometown. Very proud. But Vinny does do some of his own action too. And one of the things I loved about working with him is Vinny throws with what I call intent. Like when Vinny Jones throws a punch, it looks like he's trying to kill you. It's really great. And he picks up choreo super well. Very quickly.
I think that's important too. And you can maybe speak to this better than I can, but just there is a difference between throwing a punch where I'm trying to fight you, or a movie punch where you're. Oh yeah. And
it's huge.
And selling a punch too. The other thing is when the getting hit point. For in a film, you really got to sell that hit to. And that's on the actor and the stunt performer, and it's a whole art in and of itself to really have a believable fight scene,
It's very true. Selling is equally as important as the person throwing, but also, and again, I don't know how many people know about this. Obviously, Stu's previous career was as a WWE superstar, Wade Barrett and Bad News Barrett, and he had plenty of wrestling names, and he's still working in the field today, but not in the ring. And he was essentially a heel, which meant he got the shit kicked out of him on a regular basis in the ring.
It really shows in the action with him, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because considering how big Stu is and how much of a unit he is and his combat abilities and everything,
A unit.
but he sells like if you think about it, when you watch the classic movies with Arnie and to a degree Stallone, although Stallone took more hits, I think overall, a lot of these guys never used to really take the hits. Stallone did in Rocky, like as a boxer, but a lot of the time the heroes were kind of invulnerable. You know,
right?
And
Yeah.
look, and I love those movies. I'm not disrespecting those movies whatsoever. I love them all. But there's something about the fact that Stu, like I say, in inverted commas, in real life, has taken the hits, right?
Yeah.
Where and given how big he, given his invulnerability, his perceived invulnerability, if you like, on screen, when you then get him fighting Vinny is a credible threat on screen to Stu, and look, we all know that Vinny had his hard man of football career, which is one of the things that made him very famous in the UK and probably across the world. And he's absolutely convincing on screen as a villain, and he has physical capability. That was one of these were contributing factors to having someone like Vinny step into the role of Teague. We needed someone who could square up to Stu on screen, be commanding, be authoritative, have make their relationship believable and credible, in the past, and also have a good sense of humor. All of those other, the other things that kind of build the character. But it needed to be somebody. In the first movie, we had Gary Daniels, who, again, for anyone who doesn't know, amazing martial artist, very very strong on screen, and very capable, like super capable martial arts wise. So he was a very credible threat in the first movie and a very different kind of fighter, very different kind of style, right? So it was really important for the sequel in terms of bigger and better, and again I use that advisedly, to have an actor who can match up for real in terms of screen terms, and of course have the marketability and household name level.
For sure. Honestly, too, Vinnie Jones is just an actor that if he was just reading his grocery list aloud, I'd be like, whoa,
Yes.
He's got that presence, as they say. So talk to me a bit about production, like what, like a day in, day out type, what's like a normal day on an action set, and, a bit about like directing action and how you build your shot list out. And, obviously you're trying to think about everything. Do you just plan a scene like sort of like how Hong Kong stuff is done? Like you go shot by shot, or do you plan to like strike the room with coverage? Walk us a bit through of like your process of directing on an action.
Okay, cool. So this is all very personal. Some people will probably relate, some people might not. A fight scene is absolutely the same as a dialogue scene, as in terms of the content. A punch, I know it sound. A punch is the same as a verbal insult. It's a sort like it's characters and story. So I kind of use this as a sort of a frame of reference. If John Gold, who has his own, if you like, experience and training and combat experience, all of that, if he is attacked by 10 different characters, and I'm including people that you might call cannon fodder, people who just run in and get hit.
The red shirts.
But if you, right, yes, absolutely, or ninjas or Nazis or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
I call them cannon fodder. So literally with reference to cannon movies. But the point is, those 10 people, unless they're part of like the same military unit or something, will all have diverse skills or experiences or training, or they're from different parts of the world, or whatever you want to apply to them, right? And again, if they're in the same military unit, it means they've just got a sort of a uniform, perhaps, set of reactions to things, right? Because they've all been through the same drills, right? But they're still individual. I hope this is making sense.
No, I'm completely following your train of thought here. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. So the point is that those 10 different characters would attack Gold 10 different ways, and that's leaving out things like, are there weapons lying around? Is there a bottle on the bar? Is there, that's leaving out the environmental stuff, if you like.
Right.
And in response, Gold would respond to those 10 different attacks entirely differently, potentially. Right? So he might duck one or dodge one or grab one's arm and then throw him, or, what I mean? They're all different. He would respond differently. So that, to me, is the equivalent of a character's dialogue. cause and effect. Why does someone say something or do something? Well, Gold blocked that punch because, Jerry threw, you know what I mean? Like, my point is, it's got to have cause and effect, like any story. Every fight scene has story beats, usually. Sometimes it's just a fight. But for the most part, certainly in Retaliation, in the script writing process, I wrote the fight. Not the choreography, except maybe some specific beats, like, I don't know, this guy gets hit with a bottle, or, you know what I mean? There'd be certain, Gold grabs a shotgun and hits the guy over the head with it. There are story beats that are written, but then you get in someone like Tim Mann, our fight choreographer, or Dan Stiles and Dominic Kinnaird, our tremendous stunt coordinators, who, all three of them, in their own ways, are like collaborative storytellers. They are obviously, Dominic and Dan, and certainly Tim, are concerned with safety and keeping everyone, protected, as well as making it all look convincing. Tim Mann is an incredible fight choreographer. For those who don't know, he does a lot of Scott Adkins' movies. He does tons of other movies. He is very creative. Before he came to the shoot on this film, he prevised not all of the fights. There's about 19 fights in the movie.
Yeah, there's a lot of, if you like martial arts action, this is the movie for you.
There's a lot. Thank you. There's a lot of fights. He prevised not all of them, but the vast majority. We had very small amount of time to prepare, but he got his team together. And for anyone who doesn't know, prevising just simply means choreographing the fights and then filming them with a camera and editing them so that he can use those sequences. I would make some notes as well here and there or whatever, but overall he's fantastic. And he knew what I wanted from the fights. Like, he understood where the story was and so forth. But we would, we would adjust them if needed. But the point is, he would then use these sequences to communicate with, for example, our DOP, Simon Rowling, who was fantastic, production design if needed, and obviously the actors and anyone else required. He could show that sequence and say, that's what we're going for today. That's what we're aiming at.
That's great. That's a great way. In a similar way, it's just like a more advanced storyboarding. In
Absolutely,
a sense.
very, very much. And also the fact that he's run it through with people as well means that he knows that it can be achieved, the unforeseen notwithstanding. I was going to say withstanding. I'm not that British. And of course, here's where the talented cast come in, because not everybody, but nearly everyone on the cast had a fantastic combat experience, screen combat experience, but physicality. They understand the deal when you're doing fight scenes. And that helps immensely. People who've taken choreo, they understand it, they're focused. They also bring their own flavour to it. There are people like Katrina Durden, Jean-Paul Lee, Greg Burridge, who's a great wrestler, Joe Egan, who's he sparred with Mike Tyson. For anyone who doesn't know who Joe Egan is, that's amazing. And so many more. Phoebe Robinson-Galvin, Stu himself, of course, and so many other fighters. And the fact that some of them already worked together, so that really helps. They've already got some chemistry and they understand each other's spatial relationships, things like that. So without trying to veer too much of the point is we have these sequences. We don't always have them, but we mostly do have them. So that gives you a starting point. Secondly, it's about we were shooting 2 cameras pretty much continuously, barring our last day of filming. We pretty much had 2 cameras, so we would, if you like, collaboratively figure out what shots could we knock off in terms of where the lighting was and how, the set or wherever we were. Because anyone who doesn't know, you tend to shoot action. Here's a few things about shooting action. You might end up shooting it very much out of order depending on the lighting setups. You might sort of decide, let's just shoot this way first, nail all of the material there. And that may mean filming, 2 punches from the middle, a kick from the end. You just might do that. And you tick it off and do it again. The broader point is, if you're filming a fight scene, whatever you do, this might come as a surprise to some people, do not shoot the whole scene from 9 different angles. Don't do it. And the reason why I say that is, first of all, learn the angles that work for the techniques that you're using. Watch movies, figure that out.
You're going to burn your stunt people out too if you do that.
You're going to burn your stunt people and your actors and your whole crew out. And it's genuinely a waste of time, because unless it's part of your plan to use a whole like a long take, which I think are despicable in action scenes, but let's get on that another time. I think the long take action scenes are I'm not knocking the ambition or the work that goes into them. I think they're normally not right for most of the action that they're capturing. I think that there are angles that work best for action, but look, that's my opinion. It's not held. I appreciate the ambition, but when I see long take fight scenes, it all starts to look like choreography to me.
Yeah.
It always looks like choreography. It looks like they start tip-tapping at each other. It's just me. Maybe it's just me. I want to like them more. I find them very boring. I really do. Because I start to feel the construction of it.
Okay.
So,
so you like more of an
but
organic feel, like it's happening live.
I feel a little bit. I mean, I can't maybe I can't name what it is that I like, but I can name what I don't like. If that makes a bit like if you see someone. I have no experience with guns except for what my armorer, who my armory effects are amazing. They make me hold guns to make me understand what it feels like to hold one, and they're right to do that. I agree, but I don't like guns. I know I don't know anything about guns, but I know that on screen, if I see someone holding a gun and it's wrong, I know it's wrong.
Right.
I can't tell you what to make it right. I don't know about you. If I see that, I know it's wrong. Does that make sense? So
100%. Or if they are using, like, I'm not sure if you guys use real blank firing guns or if you guys use
we use a lot of those. We use a lot of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like the popular thing to do now is like airsoft and whatnot.
Yeah.
If they're not respecting it in a way, then you're like, well, you never used one of these. Just stances too. Like I've had people on set too that they're like, they showed me like, well, this is what police really stand like. He's like, but if you're in the movies, this is the way you'll stand for that, or whatever. All that's
it's different. Fighting is different for movies.
Exactly.
Completely different. So it's about respecting that and understanding it. And look, we could go into the minutiae of this all day. But the point is, working with the people who understand it, it helps a lot. So the point is, don't just shoot blanket coverage, because you'll end up not using it. You're wasting a lot of time. And when you know the right, I always say get safety options. Don't necessarily just shoot things one way. I'm not saying don't vary it up, because you need some choices in the edit suite, right?
Right, but there is a point where even people on set might be like, he doesn't know what he's doing.
Oh yeah, no, I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen that. I mean, I worked as a coordinator on a film that I ended up being a great drama. I heard that the director, I didn't know if it was my plan, the director actually said to the DOP, so we're going to shoot all of it from here, then all of it from here. And it's a 2-minute fight scene. And it was a super unchoreographed looking fight scene, if that makes sense.
Right.
It's two people sort of trying to kill each other, which was a fascinating thing to work on, because it's not the same thing as a movie, what you'd call a movie fight.
Right.
I heard that, and the actors we were working with in the rehearsal were burning themselves just running through it. And I had to talk to the guys who brought me on and say, I just heard the director say this, and I really feel like they're just going to burn. You're going to get like 2 good takes. And
then, somebody's going to get hurt.
And someone's going to get hurt. In fact, one of the actors kept kind of hurting themselves in the rehearsal. We had to kind of keep telling them, I'm not going to get into it. But we were really concerned because they were burning the energy of people. They were amazing oh my goodness, it was an incredible experience. But you don't want to, in real life, you don't want that. You've just killed your day.
Yeah.
You've just killed your day. So I had the permission of the producers to go and speak to the director and just say, I had to sort of say, how are you thinking about breaking this down? Yeah. And then he said it. And then I said, may I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
And it was fine. And that wasn't meant to be condescending. It is sort of experience, and it's sort of trying to get the best out of every day.
Yeah. Well, anyway, again, look, we work in a collaborative medium too, right? So.
Right, exactly. So anyway, so the point is, the other reason why this works well in terms of not picking your angles is once you've shot it, you can forget about it. You don't have to remember, the performers don't have to worry about that piece of action ever again.
Yeah.
It's done. Move on, tick it off, move on.
Yeah. Are you thinking about shots not only in terms of when you're shooting, but like how it's all going to edit together since you are the editor on the picture, or?
Yes, editing is almost forefront in my mind because it's storytelling. So we did actually have to drop a few things in Retaliation on the day, and I was like, we did a few pickups here and there through the shoot, not another day, we did, and I was like, I'm not kidding. I must have been annoying to the person. I was like, if we don't get this insert, there's no scene.
Right.
So we really need to find. And he was brilliant at what he was doing. He wasn't, you know what I mean? But it was just like, I'm the editor, and I know. But if we don't get this little insert of this thing, this scene may. And I'm not being pretentious either. It will not edit.
Yeah.
We need this moment to be able to cut. So
And that can sync and edit too. If you're in the edit and you're like,
it can destroy a scene. It can destroy a scene, which could then destroy an act. Like, not even kidding. And also, I don't know about you or other people when you're filming. The way my thought process works just from the moment we start shooting is, what did we just shoot? What are we shooting right now? What are we shooting next? And what have I forgotten?
Yeah. I asked that question a lot. Like, what are we forgetting? So on that topic though of production, like how long did you spend in production and you know, like you're kind of in one location seemingly the whole time, for at least minus the strip club at the start, or?
Yeah, so we had 22 shooting days. There was actually a scene we shot in London on the first day, but unfortunately didn't make it into the finished film. It was a good scene. It's a deleted scene anyway, which I think will be on the Blu-ray and everything. The very last day was actually a gentleman's club in Essex called Cats, which I recommend for a gentleman's entertainment. And then the rest of the shoot was actually in a place called RAF Bentwater in Suffolk, which is essentially kind of like an Air Force museum.
Oh, okay.
And it has hangars and all sorts of things. And we sort of made it look like these various different places on this kind of road movie, you know, sort of chase movie sort of thing. But yeah, it was pretty amazing. The people there were incredible to work with. It's very easy to get around the site. You're obviously not in the middle of a city with all of those problems in terms of sound and things. So we did have the occasional helicopter going overhead. But sometimes that wasn't a bad thing.
Yeah,
sort of
production value.
Yeah, kind of. So that was brilliant. But yeah, I couldn't recommend it more. It turns out a lot of productions have shot in certain parts of that facility.
Did you have that location in mind when you were writing the script, or was it like kind of undescriptive in the script? No, it was purely on the recce. We reckoned a couple of places in East London. And then we were recommended it, funnily enough, from a colleague who'd worked on the first movie, who's fantastic. And in fact, it turned out our DOP had shot there previously as well. So that was very helpful. And in fact, when crews work on a lot of productions, they all tend to have worked in the same places. You know? Right.
And it was terrific. And taking the production designer, Paul Burns, who was brilliant there, was fantastic because he would take all these great photographs and then kind of construct with almost like drawings in the photos, like how he was going to kind of then build it. And then Simon, the DOP, would also then put like the lighting plan in as well. So for example, that final hangar, it's called the Hush House at Bentwaters, the thing with the big tunnel that looks like something out of Event Horizon. It's like that was a completely empty room. There was nothing in it. And then the production designer and his team just built this incredible set, which was important because we had to have 5 separate quadrants for these fights. Because in the end, there's like 4 or 5 fights happening at the same time in the final showdown. And they all had to kind of be separated. And so, of course, for each one, sometimes there was an angle we couldn't shoot at all because otherwise you would see there's nobody in the background, you know, having their fight sort of thing. But we made it work. We held for it. And the other thing I was going to say, obviously we had these previous sequences, but we also had to adapt sometimes and say, listen, we've got time for 4 more setups. We do not have time to do everything. How are we going to adapt what we're shooting? But that was the same. That was the same with drama. Sometimes that wasn't exclusive to action scenes.
But that's something too. Like with you being the editor, you at least can do some quick math in your head. Like, I can make this work with these shots. Kind of thing.
Oh yes, absolutely. And I will say at the very start of the process, and I recommend this to anybody out there who's making a movie, if they don't already do it, is I would earmark certain scenes where you just say, listen, all we're doing for this is, whether it's for wide or a mid, if it's 2 or 3 people talking, a wide or a mid, close up on each person and we're out. Like you should earmark scenes to do that, because first of all, it's good to get some easy wins, and secondly, and also make sure those scenes aren't too close together in the script, if you see what I mean. Yeah. Like kind of, you know, because you will, first of all, it's so much more satisfying that you nail 3 or 4 setups to get the hell out and you've delivered your scene. And if you have a bit more time, brilliant. Go for some, you know, do a 2-shot or whatever. But just earmark some scenes where you just go very simple coverage. We've nailed it. No one will ever question it. Move on.
Yeah, you know, that point, to your point, like easy wins. That's something too. Just cast and crew morale, even to keep that going. Because if you're stuck on a thing for a long time, that can bog people down, and maybe people don't do as good of a job as you'd want them to. But those easy wins, I don't know. At least I find you build a bit of morale with people.
Yeah, every day. In fact, if you can, on like the first thing you shoot every day, and you don't always get this choice. You don't always get it, but just something that you can shoot in 1 or 2 and you're done. Everyone goes, tick, excellent, move on.
Yeah.
It really makes a difference.
That's great. So how long did you spend in post-production, and walk us through a bit about that? Like, are you looking over stuff as you go through all of post? Like, are you editing with sound effects? Like, how important is that for you? Or even like music? Like, are you working with a composer? Are you working with temp tracks? Walk us through a bit of that.
It's funny. I've never. This might just be me. I've never understood the need for temp score. I've never understood it. Like. I mean, I get it. Like, I get why someone would. I find temp score really distracting. I find the concept of finding music that works really distracting, rather than telling the story.
Oh, I'll spend hours finding music.
Oh, so many people do. And by the way, I have no. It's not meant as a disrespect on that. It can be a really. It can really alter the mood of what you're watching, right? So I totally get it. But for me, I find it. Just as in terms of telling the story, I find it very distracting. So I prefer to tell the story first with the cut. And I will then put it, when it's fight sequences, I will just lay in like impacts. I don't tend to put in the whooshes. Sometimes if there's a bit of time, I might do that to give it a little bit more oomph. I like to put the impacts in partly as a guide for whoever does the sound design to understand that there is an impact, because sometimes it's not obvious.
Right.
Because there are actually usually a lot more impacts in fight scenes than there are punches landed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, all the parries and all that.
Parries and like little grabs and things like that. And it's amazing what you suddenly notice isn't there if they don't do it.
Yeah, it's funny you say
that.
I've done action in the past as well, and I showed somebody a sequence and then showed them later down the line with effects in it. He's like, "Wow, you really changed the editing on that." I was like, "No, it's the exact same scene. It's just got sound effects now."
Right? Yeah, it changes everything. Yeah. And also that's why, and I can appreciate then obviously laying in temp sound, because it gives it a mood or a pace or something. I just find that when I'm cutting, I don't like to cut to music, if that makes sense, because in the end, the music you're going to then use, like it should complement the cut that you did. I don't know if I'm explaining myself.
I think I can see where you're going.
Rather than be like, I was so influenced by Hans Zimmer from Dark Knight. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I find it very. Yeah, maybe it's, I don't know. It's hard for me. Maybe it's a little bit like working with the actors. I don't give an actor a line read unless there's something super important to me, like a particular delivery. I trust the actors to bring in what they bring, if that makes sense. And then, so for me, it's almost the same with composer. It's like, I want them to bring something without me going, so I use this temp score and I want it to sound like that.
Yeah. Do you make suggestions? You're like, I want a little bit of like, James Newton Howard here, and then I want a little bit of whatever.
I was more, yes, a little bit. I mean, on the first movie, we had the temp score done by Greenhouse, who was amazing. They kind of did almost like a Goblin type score.
Yeah, I actually dug the first score. A bit of like kind of, I don't know, retro vibe to it.
I knew that they were going to do that simply because they provided samples of what they'd done, and I was just in love with it. And there was because it's kind of a bit of a mishmash of things, like it's almost like a contemporary Western to some degrees,
right.
But then it's also kind of retro. There's a lot of bits and bits. Hopefully it's not messy, but there's a lot of different influences, if you like, on the first movie. The second movie, in many ways, was much more, aside from it being a heavy nod to the 80s and 90s, it was much more kind of intended to be more of I don't know if it sounds a bit too generic, but kind of just more of a contemporary action movie. Something that's kind of a bit more in line with the stuff that's going on now, as well as having those nods. And so the only influences I said to the composer, Thomas Gallagher, who was great, he's based in LA, he's terrific, so much fun to work with, was I'm really thinking along the lines of Expendables and John Wick.
Right.
That's kind of what I said. And I didn't sort of say any more than that. I just sort of said the two most sort of well-known action franchises right now are essentially John Wick and then, let's say, the Expendables for argument's sake.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we're aiming at. But I didn't want to go any more specific than that. I wanted to let him bring what he brought.
So are you overseeing a lot? Are you going to like, mix sessions and sound design sessions, or are you more just hands off when it comes time for that, or?
So that's a good question. So I'm hands-on, and again, so are the producers, John and Diane, on things like the grade. So I went to a number of the sessions for the grade. Not all of them, but most of them, and of course the final. But of course they do work in between. You know,
Do you bring the DP in for that at all, or is this?
We did, yes, we did. Although not as much of a second one as we'd have liked. There was a clash of schedules, but he came in at the end and really pushed hard on it because obviously we love his contribution. You know, to be there because he's responsible for the aesthetic in the end. And so and he really came in and kind of gave it a bit of a smash at the end in the second one. The first one he was there a bit more, which was great. And in fact, he was there for most of it on the first one, thinking about it. But on the sound design, a lot of the times we would kind of get sent the sessions,
Right.
And then do it. But on the mix, we attended I think it was 3 sessions of the final mix, and that was fantastic. At Pinewood, that was amazing. It was the Michael Powell stage at Pinewood, which was colossal. So it was almost like a semi IMAX size screen to watch my movie on, and hear like every time bullets whizzed around, they were kind of going over my head. It was crazy.
That's a lot of fun when you get to see it in a mixed stage or something. I've never been to Pinewood, but I've been in a smaller mixed scenario before, and it is a lot of fun to hear it just as good as it'll ever be, I guess. Yeah, no, particularly considering it, like I say, it won't have the theatrical, so it's a shame. But no, that was amazing. But obviously, for the vast majority of that work, they do on their time, so to speak, or when you can't be there the whole time. And also, I don't want to look over people's shoulders. Like if I'm editing for someone else, I usually tell the client, "I'll send you a version first, and then you come in and we'll do tweaks." Right.
I'm not sitting there with someone behind, unless they paid an exorbitant amount of money. It's not worth the hassle.
No, definitely not.
It's really not. Like, you end up just, every time you make a change, you just hear someone go, and you kind of go, oh, just go away. Because it's not actually helping. And also, they're not doing it on purpose. It's an involuntary thing. You know what I mean? It's like, you've got better things to be doing. Let me get on with it and let me show you it. And then we'll change it together. Yeah. And that's usually 100 times more efficient.
That's great. Talk to me a bit about your process and the marketing kind of strategy that you guys had in mind for the last film and this one. And obviously you talk a lot about genre and knowing your audience. Obviously you're going to have a bit of the WWE audience. And an audience that watched the first one to begin with. So, are you guys building out social media packages? Is this something the distributors handle a bit of the marketing? Just walk us through a bit about that process.
Yeah, I mean, Saban and Lionsgate for North America obviously have their own plans. Stu did so many podcasts for this one. My goodness, I think he's done 43 podcasts.
Wow. Is he on contract to do that, or is that just for him?
Honestly, I think there's probably a contractual element, but he's so helpful and passionate about getting things out there. And of course, his time with the WWE, obviously he was cutting so many promos off the cuff and everything. He's brilliant at speaking with people. He's really great at being honest and passionate and straightforward and, dare I say, a bit marketing, but that's the whole point. It's great.
That's gotta feel good though to have that in your corner.
It's incredible. No, it kind of fills your heart up a bit.
Yeah, that's
right?
great.
Because he's a genuine guy. That's the thing. It's not coming from a place of ego. He wants the film to do well, of course, because we want to do another one. But he's very good at being straight down the line with people. I think he's so used to dealing with the public. He's got a massive Twitter and Instagram following, of course. So all of that's brilliant. I have a modest following, which I do my best with. I've done about a quarter of the ones that he's done, but that's it is amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. And you're right. There's been a certain amount of word of mouth. We've had a lot more, if you like, professional publication interest in the sequel. Arguably, that might be to do with Vinny. It might also be to do with it's a sequel. And also there might be more interest simply because of the times that we're living in. There's a film out that we watch,
Yeah.
Whatever it is, I'm grateful, and I think we all are. And yes, certainly as Evolutionary Films, we are responsible for the marketing on the UK side of the movie, as well as promoting the movie to international buyers. Like we've just, I believe we finally just sold France, which is fantastic. Germany have taken, funnily enough, on the strength of the sequel, this great German distributor, Tiberius, have taken both movies, the first one and the second one.
Oh, that's great. So do you do a
amazing.
German or French dub then? Or
I don't know, but I hope so. I can't wait to hear Stu in German.
Yeah, that's got to be...
The first time I heard, what was it, a German dub of 10 Dead Men, blew my mind. Like, I was like, this is amazing.
It's a better film.
Oh, wow. Like, I'll watch this movie. It sounds great.
Yeah.
So there's all of that.
Do you guys do festivals at all for these, or?
Well, the first one did. The first one did a bunch. The second one, if I'm honest, because we've had to wait for the release for so long, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, Saban and Lionsgate have their plans. We're not going to do anything to jeopardize that, and we want to obviously release it as strong a way as possible in the UK. Our home territory. So we haven't really discussed festival strategy for the second movie per se. I feel like once it's been out in a number of territories, we may offer it out simply because it helps with the profile of the movie.
Yeah. I'm curious to know your thoughts
now,
on festivals in general, especially because an action movie, there's not at least in my experience, like getting an action movie into a festival is super hard. Whereas like a horror, like there's so many horror festivals, like you can just fill up your poster of laurels. I mean, I did that on a short. And so it's a lot easier for that, but like even like another genre we work in is comedy, and like that's also hard. Like festivals are like hard. Horror or the movies that are like that make you cry or make you think kind of.
Right. Yeah. Or civil rights movies now.
Exactly. Yeah, just something like that.
There's like non-violence movie festivals. I'm like, okay.
Right.
I mean, I'm not going to that festival.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really know. By the way, I'm sure it's a terrific cause. I don't mean to sound too trivial because, that's great. Let's be fair.
No.
But I don't know who it attracts, but then again, maybe I'm not supposed to. So fine. And actually,
it's not for us.
Right, that's fine. That's fair enough. We can turn it off like anything else. The first movie was in a bunch of festivals. I mean, there are some action festivals. There's the Urban Action Showcase, which we went to in New York, where we actually won for the first movie. We won Best Film, Best Actor, and Best Action. So that was amazing.
A sweep.
It was amazing. And it was hosted by HBO and Cinemax, and I'm a massive fan of both of those. So that was pretty exciting.
Wow.
And we did some other ones, like it was the IDTV, the Iron Dragon Festival, and it was a bunch. It was kind of cool. So for the second one, I'm not sure. You're right about horror, though. Like, I mean, my favourite film festival, arguably, in the world is Fright Fest.
Oh, cool. I think I got my horror short into that one last year.
It's tremendous.
Yeah.
I know the organisers quite well. They're really passionate, really committed to programming an amazing array of films. Funnily enough, I managed to get back in time, just in time to watch a movie because I was actually in New York. And I literally managed to I landed on the last day and literally got back from Heathrow. I'd had no sleep for like nearly 2 days, and I still watched the movie.
That's good. That's great.
I just wanted to be there. Very passionate about that festival.
It'd be interesting to see what happens now with like COVID. Like everyone's doing online festivals, and then it's like, what's the point of even being part of the festival?
Unfortunately, I agree with that. Like I've seen, there's a movie that some friends of mine have made, which is done very well. It's an action genre movie, and it's been winning a lot of festivals online. And I'm like, congratulations to them. I mean that sincerely. And there's a little bit of me going, well, should I have entered mine then in all of those? Because if they won, there's a good chance we would have at least been nominated and maybe won some of it. Maybe
had a bit of press surrounding it, or
maybe. But then also, and I hope I'm not out of line for saying it, that movie that's one of these things, which is great. I haven't actually seen anything about it except for them saying they've won it.
Right. So what's
that doesn't mean there isn't anything else. But I'm just like,
no, I share your thoughts on that to an extent. Like I go back and forth. Like, do I bother submitting stuff to festivals and get seen in a festival, or just releasing it and just spending all your marketing energy on just getting people to see it out in the wild, But I don't know.
I wonder if there's an appetite for a festival where in the last, and let's just say for argument's sake, at the end of this year, optimistically, where you could say, Okay, so all the movies that have won all of these festivals in the last 5, let's say 5 months, does anyone want to come and see them on a screen? Because we'll put them all on.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Will people show up? Yeah.
festival. Well, it's a good question.
Yeah.
Because you kind of go, particularly if you know these films all won, and then or were very well received or whatever, and then you have the awards at that festival for the winners of winner of winners, right? And then what actually wins? I think that would be fascinating. I'm genuinely curious about doing that now.
Look, and also to some earlier points about cons, that is a go to a festival and meet people to network type of a thing. And a lot of festivals, even on a small scale, a lot of it is that you're networking with people, you're meeting people, it's for something else, for the next thing. And if everything is online now, that type of person-to-person meetings, you're not going to get that anymore. So,
no, not for a while, certainly. I mean, we actually attended the virtual Cannes as a I didn't, but John and Diane did. And, we had buyer meetings and they screened our movies, which was good, It's not the same thing, though. No. I had some friends who attended, inverted commas, the seminars that were going on. And I'm like, I don't want to sit and watch a seminar on my computer screen.
Yeah.
I just don't want to. I'm interested, of course, but I've got editing to do and other stuff. I can watch NCIS or something. And by the way, I'm picking that as a mediocre show, that's fine. But I could have that on while I'm editing rather than not really pay attention to a seminar.
Yeah.
I'd rather just be very close to that, right?
Yeah, fair enough. The world will be unknown for the next little bit for sure. But with that said, what do you guys have next? Are you planning to do a third movie, make it a trilogy, or?
So there are currently, for real, 2 scripts for Vengeance 3. And they are 2 totally different scripts. So I guess it could be Vengeance 3 and 4, or it could be Vengeance 3 and Movie X, like Action Movie X, because you could change the names and all of that stuff. And again, they're both written in theory that you wouldn't need too much knowledge. They are both slightly more connected to the second movie for various reasons. Just slightly more. There's slightly more DNA, if you like, that crosses over. But still essentially designed script-wise that you don't necessarily have to have seen either of the films,
right?
To watch them. So those exist. As a director myself, I have a short film coming out fairly soon, when festivals are sort of a bit more live and in person. I directed a third part of a franchise called Dead End, which is Dead End 3, Dead Man Walking, for Brian Larkin. If you're not aware of him, he was in London Has Fallen with Jerry Butler and Chasing the Dragon with Donnie Yen and Andy Lau, and a bunch of movies and TV shows. And he was one of the lead villains in the first Vengeance movie, and he invited me to direct the third part. And it's great because it's not an action movie; it's an espionage thriller. There's a few action beats, but we shot it in Scotland, which was incredible. And I've been in London opposite the MI5 building. That was great too.
Oh, jealous. My Scotland trip got cancelled because of COVID.
No. Well, we shot at a place called Blair Gowrie, which was about a 2-hour drive from Glasgow, if I remember correctly. It was in the wilds of Scotland. It was pretty spectacular, actually.
Awesome.
And I'm really excited. And I'm really excited as a director because it's got my first dialogue scenes in a foreign language. It's in Chinese, so I'm really excited about that.
Interesting. What was that like directing in another language?
Well, there's a degree of trust that's required.
I guess so, hey?
First of all, I'm assuming, I know how this sounds, I'm assuming that they said the dialogue we asked them to say, because I don't know. Brian does a bit more himself because he's been in China for a lot longer. Anyway, I'm assuming that's all fine. I'm being a little bit facetious, but there is trust required somewhat because you are relying on that. And then all you can do is sort of interpret the performance, if you like, the actual the mannerism and the way that was lovely to do. So that was a challenge, but in a good way. And it's certainly a more, how can I put it? It's a mature thriller. Like it's very. I think. I probably shouldn't be the person to say this. I think it operates on a high level in terms of what the story, like how the narrative unfolds. So cool. I'm really excited about people seeing that. And then the only other thing is currently in post, and it's taken longer than I wanted due to quarantine and everything. But I directed my first horror short in January, which is a very it's hard to explain. It was originally kind of a survival horror, kind of like an action horror, and there is an element of that, but it's much, much more about the setup now in terms of how what occurs on screen occurs. It's a bit more. It's kind of about the build now.
Okay.
If that makes sense. I'm being a bit vague because I don't really want to give away the details.
No, that's cool.
But it's kind of about obsessions with health fads and trends, and the stuff like seminars that people sign up to that take you to the next level of health and things like that.
Right.
So it's kind of a maybe satire is too specific a word, but it is a kind of like a knowing take on that sort of thing.
Interesting, neat stuff, man.
Thank you.
Well, people can check out I Am Vengeance, Retaliation, and I Am Vengeance, the first one, on iTunes, Amazon, kind of anywhere you can get movies on VOD, right?
Yep, absolutely. All major platforms.
And they can find you and everyone else on social media, whereabouts?
Yes, so for myself, it's at Ross Boyask on all the social things. For Evolutionary Films, it's at Evo Films UK. And then for the Vengeance franchise, it's at Vengeance Film UK, because we named everything that before the I Am Vengeance title took off.
Right.
But we love hearing from everybody. Please, feel free to contact. And dare I say, if you have films in development or in post or whatever, if you're shooting, and hope you're shooting somehow safely, because people need product, right?
Yeah.
so, or if you have something in post, we would genuinely be delighted to hear from you, genre-wise for sure. For anyone who might be interested in a very outspoken podcast, I'm a co-host of something called Ross and the Phil Talk Movies, which you can find where you get your podcasts, and it's a fairly strong opinions show, which basically developed from the fact that Phil and I have sort of 2-hour ranting conversations on the phone, and we sort of thought, maybe we should inflict this on the rest of everyone. Just inflict this.
That's great.
They're not normally that long. They're normally between half an hour and an hour. But if you want to hear two British people being very angry about Spectre, fuck me, Spectre. Fuck.
Didn't like
Spectre.
it. Didn't like it, eh?
Spectre is unbearable. Spectre is like. So for anyone who might be interested, check out the Spectre episode, because it's a good entrance point. We think we sort of hit our stride with it, and I'm willing to debate Spectre all night long with people. The anger level hasn't subsided.
Really?
Like it should have subsided by now, but Spectre makes me ever more angry.
Are you a Bond fan from the beginning, or?
Sure. No, I love Bond, and let's be honest. Virtually, if not all, action movie tropes come from Bond. Virtually.
Yeah.
Nearly ninjas, for God's sake.
Yeah.
You only live twice is a ninja movie in the end. Vic Armstrong's first job, by the way, amazing. And you just sort of go, so much comes from it. And there's so many Bond films that I love, and there's so many Bond films that I think are nonsense, but I still enjoy them. But Quantum of Solace and Spectre, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I would say Quantum is probably my least favorite. I love Bond a lot. We've gone down Bond rabbit holes on this podcast, and we did a commentary for Spy Who Loved Me, which has one of the best mistake things in a film, but they put it in on purpose, where they painted Roger Moore on a rock because they didn't have him for coverage.
I've shown people that shot; they lose their minds.
I know.
Because it's an incredible painting.
Yeah, it's hilarious that's in a movie.
Well, if you compare, I know this is a slight tangent, but have you ever seen Game of Death, the Bruce Lee?
Yeah.
1970? Have you seen? There's a shot in that movie where they've put a paper photograph.
Yeah, because he was dead. Yeah.
Yeah. They put a paper photograph of Bruce Lee's face on a mirror,
and
then had the guy's body under it. But you can just see that it's the photograph.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. You got to get creative, I guess.
Kind of.
Well, that's a topic for a whole other podcast. Ross, very much thank you for coming on the podcast and letting us know about your process of filmmaking. I genuinely find it fascinating, and I had a very good time having chats with you. So I really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I hope I haven't been too rambling.
No, that's great.
It's been great talking with you.
It's a lot of great information.
Oh, thank you.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. And be sure to follow us on Twitter @Lost Commentary. on Instagram at Raiders of the Lost Commentary, and like us on Facebook.
I'll be back.